It started with a locked mahogany box that had not been opened in years. Hidden beneath layers of royal protocol and silence, Princess Diana's personal diary was never supposed to resurface, let alone land in Princess Charlotte's hands. But when Queen Camilla reportedly demanded the transfer be stopped, palace insiders say the atmosphere inside Kensington Palace turned instantly icy, because this was never just about a diary. It was about legacy, bloodline, and the memory of the woman the monarchy still cannot escape. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. For years, that sealed collection had remained untouched, treated less like a family possession and more like a royal fault line. Reports suggest it was tied quietly to Princess Diana's private legacy, preserved away from public hands, protected from gossip, and guarded from anyone who might turn memory into weaponry. But when Princess Charlotte's name reportedly appeared in confidential estate discussions, the silence around that box changed instantly. Palace aides, according to whispers, were stunned. Not because Charlotte had been forgotten, but because she had been chosen. The diary was said to carry deeply personal reflections about royal life, motherhood, pain, trust, and betrayal. It was not a crown jewel. It was not a tiara placed under glass. It was something far more dangerous: Diana's own voice, untouched by palace editing, untouched by official statements, untouched by the cold machinery that had spent decades trying to control what the public remembered. And that, insiders claim, is why the reaction behind closed doors was so severe. William and Catherine reportedly treated the matter with extreme care, knowing that anything linked to Diana could ignite public emotion within minutes. For William, this was not merely inheritance. It was protection. It was a son guarding the final private fragments of a mother whose story had been told by everyone except herself. And for Catherine, it reportedly became a deeply emotional matter, because Charlotte was no longer just a young princess in the line of succession. She had suddenly become the living bridge between Diana's unfinished pain and the monarchy's uncertain future. Then came the alleged objection. Reports suggest Camilla privately demanded that the transfer be refused or delayed, warning that reopening Diana's private writings could destabilize the fragile peace inside the royal family. But to others, that warning sounded less like caution and more like fear. Because if Charlotte one day inherited Diana's diary, she would inherit more than paper and ink. She would inherit the truth behind the smiles, the cost behind the titles, and the loneliness hidden beneath royal duty. Within hours of the news leaking, media circles claimed tensions between royal households intensified. Every silence felt deliberate. Every denial sounded rehearsed. And Charlotte, still protected from the storm forming around her, had unknowingly become the emotional center of a divide that reached back decades. But what terrified certain palace figures wasn't merely the existence of Diana's diary, it was the possibility that Charlotte could one day read everything hidden inside it. Long before Princess Charlotte was born, Princess Diana reportedly made quiet arrangements about what should happen to her most personal possessions. And according to various royal interpretations, one item stood above the jewels, dresses, and letters locked away after 1997. The diary, a private chronicle of heartbreak, betrayal, motherhood, and survival. A document some believed should remain buried forever. The idea that Diana had left behind handwritten journals was never treated like a simple family matter. It carried weight. It carried danger. It carried the kind of emotional power that could unsettle an institution built on silence. Reports suggest portions of her private writings were secured after her death, not because they were ordinary memories, but because they may have captured the monarchy at its most vulnerable. through the eyes of the woman who had lived inside its golden cage and paid a devastating price. For William, the diary was reportedly never political. It was personal, painfully personal. It was not a weapon to be used against anyone, not a document to be leaked, and not a relic for public curiosity. It was the voice of his mother, preserved in private words, speaking from a time when the crown demanded grace while offering little comfort in return. And that is why, according to insiders, he believed its future had to be handled with dignity, not fear. But Diana's writings, palace historians whisper, could be emotionally explosive if ever revealed, not because they needed scandal to matter, but because Diana's truth had always carried a force the monarchy struggled to control. Every sentence, every reflection, every private confession could reopen old wounds that had never truly healed. The public had moved on in years, but not in feeling. Diana remained unfinished business. Then came Charlotte. Those close to William reportedly saw something familiar in her temperament. A softness mixed with strength, a natural compassion, a quiet emotional intelligence that reminded him of Diana in ways he rarely spoke aloud. Catherine, according to palace whispers, understood this deeply. She allegedly supported the idea that Diana's legacy should not be locked away forever, but preserved with care through the granddaughter, who might one day understand its meaning without turning it into spectacle. Some insiders believe Diana wanted future royal women to know the cost of the crown before it demanded too much from them. Not to frighten them, but to prepare them. To warn them that beauty, duty, and public love could never fully protect a woman from loneliness inside palace walls. That possibility reportedly made the diary feel less like inheritance and more like a sacred warning. And perhaps that was why tensions grew. Because Camilla's allies allegedly feared the diary could revive comparisons, the palace had spent decades trying to soften. Diana's memory was not weak. It had not faded. It was waiting. And as whispers about the diary spread through palace corridors, one private confrontation reportedly changed everything overnight. Reports suggest Queen Camilla did not stay silent when she learned Charlotte's name had become attached to Diana's private papers. According to palace administrative whispers, objections were raised almost immediately behind closed doors. Because within the fragile architecture of the modern monarchy, Diana's memory still carries enormous power, and some feared that power was about to return through the next generation. What had begun as a quiet inheritance matter reportedly became a political tremor inside the palace. Sources claim Camilla viewed the diary as emotionally dangerous, not because it was public, but because it belonged to a past the monarchy had never fully controlled. Diana's name still carried a force that could change the temperature of a room. It could soften crowds, harden opinions, and reopen questions that official statements had tried to close for decades. Palace insiders allegedly described heated discussions over the danger of reopening old wounds. But those wounds, some whispered, had never truly healed. They had simply been covered with ceremony, duty, and time. The diary threatened to disturb all of that. If its contents ever leaked, even partially, the public fallout could be devastating, not because it would necessarily reveal scandal, but because Diana's private emotions could remind people of everything the institution had once failed to protect. William reportedly resisted any attempt to delay or redirect the inheritance. For him, this was not a matter to be negotiated by courtiers or softened by palace politics. It was his mother's legacy. It was Charlotte's connection to a grandmother she never met. And every effort to interfere, insiders claim, only made him more determined to keep the diary within the line Diana herself would have trusted. Catherine allegedly became fiercely protective during this dispute. Not loudly, not publicly, but with the quiet strength of someone who understood that Charlotte was being pulled into a battle, older than herself. Reports suggest Catherine feared the emotional weight this inheritance could one day carry, yet she also believed shielding Charlotte from Diana's truth forever would be its own kind of betrayal. Because some legacies are not meant to be erased simply because they make powerful people uncomfortable. As the tension deepened, royal staff were reportedly instructed to avoid discussing the diary entirely. No casual remarks, no hallway whispers, no written references that could be misread or leaked. Media insiders claim security around archival materials suddenly tightened, as if the palace feared not only the diary's existence, but the chain reaction it could create. During that period, observers noted a growing distance between royal households. Invitations became colder. Communications became shorter. Smiles became less convincing. And beneath it all sat the same chilling question. Why would one private diary cause so much fear unless its pages carried something the palace was desperate to keep buried? But while the palace fought to contain the tension quietly, another shocking detail reportedly emerged from Diana's sealed collection. It was not merely the diary that unsettled palace circles. According to whispers from royal archivists, a handwritten letter was reportedly discovered among Diana's preserved belongings, one allegedly intended for the future young women of the House of Windsor. And insiders claim its existence sent shockwaves through those desperate to keep the past buried beneath decades of royal reinvention. The letter, if palace whispers are accurate, changed the entire meaning of the inheritance. The diary had already been dangerous enough, carrying Diana's private reflections through years of loneliness, pressure, and public judgment. But a message written with future royal women in mind made the discovery feel deliberate, personal, almost prophetic. It suggested that Diana was not simply recording her pain. She may have been preserving a warning. Reports suggest the handwritten message focused on identity, isolation, and the quiet cost of surviving inside a royal system that could praise a woman in public while slowly breaking her in private. It was allegedly not written as an accusation, but as a confession shaped by experience. And that made it even more powerful. Because anger can be dismissed, bitterness can be explained away. But honest pain, written before history has softened it, is much harder to bury. Some palace figures reportedly feared what the letter could symbolize if Charlotte ever received it. The comparison would be impossible to avoid. Diana, the young princess who entered the monarchy with hope. Charlotte, the young princess growing up inside a monarchy still haunted by Diana's shadow. To the public, it could look like a grandmother reaching through time to protect a granddaughter from the very pressures that once consumed her. William allegedly understood that symbolism immediately. According to insiders, the discovery only strengthened his determination to honor Diana's wishes completely. He did not see the letter as a threat to the monarchy. He saw it as part of his mother's truth. And after years of watching Diana's image debated, packaged, defended, and exploited, he reportedly believed that her own words deserved more protection than anyone else's interpretation. Royal commentators described the moment as a collision between two royal eras. On one side stood the old machinery of containment, trained to manage scandal by locking doors and controlling language. On the other stood a new generation forced to decide whether silence was still loyalty, or whether protecting the crown sometimes meant admitting what the crown had cost. Charlotte, of course, reportedly remained shielded from the public storm gathering around her name. But inside the family, insiders claim the emotional tension became impossible to hide. Conversations turned guarded, loyalties hardened. Even ordinary decisions began to feel loaded with history. And the monarchy feared what always returned whenever Diana's name rose again: public emotion, public memory, and public judgment. Because Diana was not just remembered, she was felt. And just as the palace attempted to suppress growing speculation, William reportedly made a decision that stunned even senior royal aides. For years, Prince William had carefully balanced duty, silence, and restraint. But palace insiders whisper that Diana's diary changed something inside him. Because this was no longer about headlines or old rivalries. It was about protecting his mother's voice and ensuring Princess Charlotte inherited more than titles, jewels, or protocol. She would inherit truth. Reports suggest William refused every attempt to interfere with the transfer. Not loudly, not recklessly, but with a controlled firmness that reportedly unsettled those who expected him to compromise for the sake of palace peace. For decades, the monarchy had survived by containing emotion, polishing pain into duty, and asking wounded people to remain silent for the greater good. But this time, insiders claim William would not allow silence to become surrender. Catherine allegedly stood beside him with the same quiet force. She understood that Charlotte's name had become attached to something far larger than a private family keepsake. This was Diana's memory being tested again. Not by cameras or headlines, but by the old instinct to manage, delay, and bury anything that carried emotional risk. And Catherine, according to those familiar with the tension, believed Charlotte deserved protection, without being denied the truth of where she came from. Royal aides reportedly described William as unusually resolute during internal meetings. He listened. He measured every word. But when pressure came to redirect the diary, delay the inheritance, or place the papers under stricter institutional control, his answer allegedly remained unchanged. Diana's private voice would not be turned into a palace problem. It would remain a family legacy. Some insiders believe William saw Charlotte as Diana's emotional continuation, not in title, not in destiny, but in spirit. A young royal girl growing up under immense expectation, watched before she could fully understand why, admired before she could choose what admiration meant. That parallel reportedly struck William deeply. Because he knew what public love could do. He had seen it lift his mother like a saint, then crush her like a scandal. Afterward, palace observers claimed tensions with Camilla quietly deepened. Nothing explosive was announced. No public rupture appeared. But behind the practiced calm, the distance reportedly widened. Every royal household understood what was at stake. Diana's diary was becoming more than an inheritance. It was becoming a symbol of who had the right to guard the past, and who feared its return. Once rumors reached media circles, public fascination intensified almost instantly. Royal historians framed the dispute as legacy warfare inside the House of Windsor. A battle not fought with crowns or carriages, but with memory, paper, and power. Charlotte, unknowingly, stood at the center of it all, a child surrounded by history, while adults struggled over what version of Diana she would one day be allowed to know. But the most emotional moment was still to come, because insiders claim Charlotte herself eventually asked a question no one inside the palace was prepared to answer. According to various palace interpretations, Princess Charlotte eventually sensed the tension surrounding her grandmother's name. The whispers, the silence, the guarded conversations that stopped whenever she entered a room. And one quiet evening, insiders claim she asked a simple question about Princess Diana, a question that reportedly left Catherine visibly emotional. It was the kind of question children ask, without knowing they have touched the deepest nerve in a family. Charlotte, according to royal whispers, had begun to notice that Diana's name carried a different weight from other royal names. It was spoken softly, carefully, almost like something precious and dangerous at the same time. She reportedly wanted to know who her grandmother had truly been beyond photographs, public stories, and the glowing memory the world still refused to release. Catherine allegedly handled those conversations with extraordinary care. She understood that Charlotte was not asking for scandal. She was asking for belonging. She wanted a connection to a woman whose absence still shaped the family around her, even decades later. And that made the moment painfully intimate, because Diana was not just history to William. She was childhood, loss, protection, grief, and unfinished love, all folded into one name. William reportedly wanted Charlotte to know Diana beyond media mythology. Not as a saint created by public mourning, not as a headline trapped forever in tragedy, but as a mother who laughed, struggled, hoped, feared, and tried to survive inside an institution that demanded more than it gave. For William, insiders claim that distinction mattered deeply. Because if Charlotte only inherited the legend, she would never understand the woman. Palace staff allegedly described the atmosphere during this period as emotionally fragile. Every discussion around the diary seemed to carry hidden pressure. Every mention of Diana risked awakening old loyalties and older wounds. Some insiders claim the diary's importance grew after Charlotte's questions, because it was no longer just a preserved object waiting for the future. It had become the missing bridge between a grandmother's private truth and a granddaughter's quiet curiosity. Royal commentators suggested history was beginning to repeat itself symbolically. Once again, a young royal woman stood at the edge of public fascination. Once again, the monarchy faced the question of how much truth it could allow before control began slipping away. And once again, Diana's emotional influence proved stronger than time, stronger than silence, and stronger than the carefully managed image the palace had spent years rebuilding. That was what reportedly frightened the institution most. Not Charlotte's question itself, but what it represented. A new generation was beginning to ask about an old pain. And if Charlotte ever read Diana's words, she might understand not just the beauty of royal duty, but the suffering hidden behind it. And as royal tensions quietly reached their breaking point, the palace reportedly prepared one final strategy to contain the fallout. The monarchy has survived scandals, betrayals, leaked tapes, memoirs, and public rebellions. But insiders whisper that Princess Diana's private diary represented a different kind of threat entirely. Not because it could damage the institution overnight, but because it could slowly reshape how the next generation understood the crown itself. Reports suggest palace communications teams began preparing quiet contingency discussions as soon as the whispers intensified. This was not handled like ordinary gossip. It was treated like a slow-burning crisis, the kind that does not explode at once but seeps into public imagination until every silence becomes suspicious. Royal insiders allegedly feared uncontrolled speculation more than any confirmed detail, because with Diana, even a fragment could become a national conversation. Some aides reportedly pushed for Diana's papers to remain under permanent archival restriction, sealed behind institutional caution and protected from emotional interpretation. To them, containment seemed safer than exposure. If the diary stayed hidden, the palace could avoid renewed questions, renewed sympathy, and renewed comparisons that no official statement could fully control. But that solution, insiders claim, only deepened William's resistance. William allegedly refused efforts to distance Charlotte from the inheritance. He understood the danger of public pressure, but he also understood the greater danger of erasing Diana's private truth for the comfort of those still unsettled by her memory. For him, the diary was not a public weapon. It was not a scandal waiting to happen. It was a mother's voice, and one day, perhaps, a grandmother's guidance. Catherine reportedly focused on Charlotte's emotional protection above all else. She was said to be less concerned with palace politics than with how a young girl might carry a legacy so heavy. Charlotte did not ask to become the center of this symbolic struggle. She did not choose to stand between Diana's memory and Camilla's reported fears. Yet the more the palace tried to manage the story, the more her name became attached to it. Camilla's supporters allegedly feared another wave of Diana comparisons, the kind that could reopen old public loyalties and cast the present against the past. Historians describe the conflict as a sign of unresolved fractures inside the House of Windsor, where old pain had not disappeared but merely changed form. The crown could modernize, reorganize, and rebrand itself. But Diana remained the one chapter it could never fully close. Then public curiosity reportedly exploded online. Every whisper became a clue. Every denial became fuel. Every mention of Charlotte and Diana in the same breath carried emotional force. The palace wanted control, but Diana's legacy had always resisted control. It belonged partly to family, partly to history, and partly to millions who still felt they had lost someone of their own. But in the end, the battle over Diana's diary was never truly about documents, inheritance, or protocol. It was about who controls her legacy now. Princess Diana has been gone for decades. Yet inside palace walls, insiders whisper that her presence still lingers in portraits, in silence, in memory, and perhaps now, in Princess Charlotte herself. Because according to royal observers, the moment Charlotte inherited Diana's private diary, the monarchy faced something it has long tried to outrun: the return of Diana's voice through a new generation. Reports suggest Charlotte's inheritance became more than a private family matter. It became a symbol of continuity, a fragile thread stretching from one royal woman's pain to another young princess's future. William and Catherine reportedly viewed the diary not as scandal, not as a weapon, and not as a threat to the crown, but as emotional history, something too personal to exploit and too meaningful to erase. In their eyes, Diana's words did not weaken the monarchy. They reminded it what humanity looked like beneath duty. But Camilla's alleged objections only intensified public fascination. The more palace circles appeared nervous, the more people wondered what remained hidden. Why did one diary stir such unease? Why did Charlotte's connection to it feel so powerful? And why, after all these years, did Diana's name still have the ability to shake the most carefully managed institution in Britain? Palace insiders claim unresolved tensions surrounding Diana continue to shape royal dynamics in ways the public rarely sees. Her legacy is not simply sentimental. It is political, emotional, and deeply personal. It sits between generations like an unfinished conversation. For William, it is grief. For Catherine, it is responsibility. For Charlotte, it may one day become understanding. And for those who feared Diana's influence, it is a reminder that memory cannot always be contained by protocol. Historians describe Charlotte as uniquely positioned within Diana's legacy. She carries no direct memory of her grandmother, yet she may inherit one of the most intimate pieces of her truth. That possibility reportedly made the diary sacred to some and dangerous to others. Royal watchers believe the story exposed deeper fractures inside the monarchy: the battle between silence and honesty, control and compassion, image and inheritance. In the end, the diary became symbolic of everything left unfinished: memory, truth, pain, survival. It represented the private Diana behind the public legend, the mother behind the myth, the woman behind the crown's most haunting chapter. And decades after her death, her influence reportedly remained stronger than many inside the palace expected. Because Diana was never just a royal story. She became a mirror. And now, through Charlotte, that mirror may be lifted once more toward the House of Windsor. And perhaps that is what unsettled the palace most of all, not the diary itself, but the realization that Diana's story may never truly belong to the past again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.